Sige po. So let's start. If we're dealing with plate boundaries and earthquakes, we have to review a little bit about the lithosphere, which was already, some terms has already been discussed to you. So as you can see in the screen, we have the different layers of the earth, and according to composition, and then the other one is about mechanical layers of the earth. Okay, so one side you're seeing the composition, inner core, outer core, then you have your mantle, your crust, then you, of course, you're at the atmosphere. No? So for the inner core, outer core, these are the densest of the metals that are formed by differentiation. So this is iron and nickel. Okay, solid for the inner core, liquid for the outer core. Then you'll have the mantle, as stated earlier, that is solid. Okay, pag sinabi po kanina yan, ano? Solid talaga ang mantle, hindi po siya liquid. And you'll have the crust, okay, that's the outer layer of the earth. For the mechanical characteristics or the mechanical layers of the earth, you'll have further differentiation of the mantle and the crust. You'll have the upper mantle that is composed of your asthenosphere, and then you'll have the lithosphere containing part of the mantle and then part of the crust. Okay. As stated earlier, the asthenosphere is fluid, not liquid, so it behaves like it flows accordingly, but it is technically still solid in nature. Then, of course, you'll have further differentiation of the crust, which is oceanic and continental. This is further differentiated in terms of its composition. One is basaltic and the other one is much more granitic. Oceanic is the one that would be denser over the continental crust. This is important when you discuss your plate tectonics theory later on. The egg that you see there, di ba nakita niyo may itlog na anong kinalaman ng itlog? The itlog is a representation of the layers of the earth, wherein the egg, the yellow, pertains to your core, the white pertains to your mantle, and then the shell pertains to your crust. Okay, so when the shell cracks, what you get would be plates. Okay, so those plates are the ones that are responsible for both volcanoes that was discussed earlier, and then for the earthquakes that will be discussed later. So it's all about the plate tectonics, diba? Plate tectonics theory, and now how does it work? As you can see here in this particular slide, you will have the energy coming from the inner core and the outer core generated heat by radioactive decay. This will be transferred by means of convection currents, and then in the convection currents, the asthenosphere will then flow accordingly due to changes in densities. Okay. And then when they flow, it will now form, or it will now make the plates, the lithospheric plates, move. Okay. So for further, for a little closer look, okay. So what happens is that, so what we have here is a figure that's showing you, for number one, this shows you the two types of crust. You'll have the continental lithosphere and then the oceanic lithosphere. Okay, and then for number two, so this is the parts. You'll have the asthenosphere, which is the semi-solid, slowly flowing upper mantle. Okay, so as we have stated, this is fluid. So if it has, it flows. Okay, but certain conditions it can be solid. Okay, and then three would be the lower mantle. This indicates where the energy is coming from, since it's heat transfer. And the area is mostly fluid, then you'll have heat transfer via convection. And as we know, convection would be transferred due to bulk masses, diba, of fluids, density differences ang main cause. So this crustal movement, okay, so the energy coming from the lower mantle, this will heat the asthenosphere at a particular area. So as it goes higher, your density decreases, therefore it rises, the asthenosphere rises until it reaches a certain area near your crust. Ito yung part ng heat transfer melting na discuss kanina ni Sir Venner, no? Part of it. So you'll have the energy, okay, that is so your asthenosphere rises, reaches your crust area. Once it reaches that area, hindi naman siya yung totally lalabas, so it will move to the side. That is why it will form your convection currents. Okay, so at this particular, at the point where the lithosphere is in contact with your asthenosphere, the part where the rising happens, this will cause now the melting of your crust, thereby creating your magma source. So when it creates the magma source, there goes the heat transfer melting. So it melts the surrounding crust, thereby creating or forcing your magma, the magma or the molten material, which is now technically less dense than the surrounding materials, will further or will continue rising. And then when it continue rising, it will now be released in the ridge, dito sa question to sa 6, no? It will now be released along the ridge, creating now your new crust. Okay, so this area here, once your magma, once molten material exits the ridge, it will push now your surrounding lithosphere. Okay, so once it go out, usually it's located in oceans. No? So the temperature difference would force the molten material to solidify, thereby creating your new crust. So the new crust thereby then pushes the older crust to the sides. Okay, so that's around 0.7 and 8. No? So it will push the rocks to the sides, okay, the lithosphere to the side up until it reaches the continental. So this is on the oceanic lithosphere up until it collides with the continental lithosphere. Now, due to the density differences of your oceanic lithosphere with the continental lithosphere, oceanic lithosphere being denser, the tendency is for the oceanic lithosphere to sink under the continental lithosphere, thereby creating your subduction zones and your trenches. So once the oceanic lithosphere has already subducted, it will not automatically melt, diba? Sabi nga, you increase pressure and temperature. So, as you increase pressure and temperature, that does not guarantee melting. Okay, kasi nga, certain conditions has to be met for melting to actually occur. Okay, so, lulubog siya, magsasubduct siya, continuous subduction ng lithosphere ninyo until it reaches the point of melting, then it becomes part of your molten material that will then later on create your volcanoes. No? So, as it goes down, therefore, dahil solid siya, it then pulls on the remaining lithosphere. Okay? Nasundan niyo ba yung idea? So, essentially, the whole plate tectonics theory is dependent not just on the convection current, but it is also helped by the two additional processes, which is the ridge push happening at 0.6 here. So, molten material pushing the lithosphere to the sides, that is ridge push, and then at 0.10, which is technically slab pull. So, since it's still solid, it continues to subduct, it pulls on the rest of the material. So, continuous siya kasi diba, before there is an idea that plate tectonics is mainly driven by the convection current. So, hindi lang siya purely, okay, convection current. So, you need those additional two forces to ensure the movement of these plates. Okay? So, as it sinks, na this creates yung picture ng inyong formation of volcanoes earlier. So, it can be due to flux melting, decompression melting, and then at 0.13, you get the heat transfer melting. These were all discussed earlier. And then, therefore, creating your landform. So, in this case, it created your volcanoes. Okay? So, that's how the plate tectonics works. So, let's first distinguish the different types of boundaries. So, when you talk about convergent boundaries, divergent pa lang una dito. So, for letter A, you'll have the divergent boundary. Okay. Mid-ocean ridge are the main features that are created in divergent boundaries. So, new seafloor is spreading or is created. Okay. Pero kung in-between continents nangyari, tingnan natin dito. Kung in-between continents siya, let's see. So, somewhere here sa may, where was it? There is this area, may location. Ito, this one. Kita niyo yung maliit na. Sorry. Itong maliit na to. Yan. So, you can see, diba, may plate siya ay technically formed in the middle of the plate boundary. And the plate boundary is partly divergent plate. So, dito sa area na to, meron niyang nakikreate na ridge. Okay? So, dahil continent, dahil land area siya, nangyayari dyan, nagsisimula siya sa valley, okay, tapos lalaki siya ng lalaki, and then habang umuulan, nagkakaroon ng tubig yung valley. Kaya doon nagpo-form yung, magsimula ka sa may lakes, okay, and then later on, will create your ocean. So, ganun yung setup kapag nasa land. Pero kung nasa tubig yan, ang mangyayari lang, lalaki yung oceans mo. That is the case for your Atlantic Ocean and then Pacific Ocean. Yep, the East African Rift is also an example of that. So nagkakaroon sila ng rift valleys naman ang tawag nila doon. Okay? So for the divergent plate boundary, ayan. So magma is being released again. It pushes. That is why if you deal with plate tectonic theory, most of the younger rocks are formed at the ridge, okay, where divergent boundaries are actually located, and then the older rocks, the older plates, part of the rocks are located at the convergent boundary. So creation, okay, or construction ang divergent boundary, destruction ng plates ang convergent boundary, because as you can see, the convergent boundary, your oceanic plate, okay, or technically the denser plate, will sink, and then this will destroy your plate. So, different types of landforms are created in convergent boundaries depending on the combinations. Okay, I'll go into detail about the convergent boundaries later. And then, of course, for the transform fault boundary, no new plate is being created. Okay, no landform. So, wala ding consumed na old plate. No? So, this too, the transform fault boundary just displaces. So, kung nangyari yan sa land, nagdi-displace lang yung mga bagay-bagay na nandun sa mismong fault. Okay? So, these are the three types of plate boundaries that are located on Earth. This maintains or conserves the size, technically, of your Earth. No? Kasi may creation, may destruction. Okay? So, ayan. So, mga sinasabi nila dyan sa seafloor spreading, yun yung mechanism natin along with the idea of the continental drift theory, creating the now plate tectonics theory. So, ano bang reason bakit nagkaka-earthquake? So, what are the mechanisms when we have earthquakes? Okay. So, let's define first earthquakes. Earthquakes, technically, sabi nyo nga po, shaking ng ground, parang nagkaka-vertigo, parang, gumagalaw ang mundo mo na parang kahit naka-steady ka lang, hindi tumitigil ang mga bagay-bagay. So, earthquakes is a violent shaking, pwedeng subtle to violent. Kasi nga, madami namang earthquakes. So, violent shaking of the Earth's surface, which is caused by the movement of the Earth's crust. The site where the seismic waves originate is called the focus, while the area on Earth's surface above it is referred to as the epicenter. So, these are other pictures of the destruction an earthquake can create. So, nararamdaman natin siya, and then affected ang paligid natin every time there's an earthquake. Kasi the ground, the floor is moving, the ground is moving, and then leading to the changes in our surface. Okay. So, earthquakes, how does it happen? Now, we have what we call the elastic rebound theory, as you can see here. That was developed by Henry Reid in 1906. So, he explains that when the rocks are moving, this creates pressure at the... So, this is the stress, no? This is the stress part. And then, when too much stress is already built up, the rocks can no longer keep the stress. So, magkakaroon ng strain, it deforms. Technically, the rock deforms, okay? So, it will deform up to the point it breaks. So, when it breaks, the energy that is stored on the rocks will be released. The movement upon release of the energy is the earthquake. So, in this four pictures, yung mismong earthquake, nandito lang sa area na to kung saan nagkaroon ng breaking. Okay? So, the strain is released, the rocks breaks along the fault, thereby creating earthquakes. Ang usual na ginagamit po natin for viewing ng ganitong klaseng earthquakes, usually we try to bend, no? Bend sticks, yung mga flat na sticks, so that you'll get to feel the vibrations. So kapag, di ba, rulers or sticks, syempre sayang kasi kapag ruler. So stick tayo, so yung mga flat. Alam niyo, di ba, yung hindi yung square yung manipis lang po, yung parang plywood lang yung kapal. Okay, so when you bend them, you'll get to see that the wood will bend up until the part that it breaks. So when it breaks, you get to feel, yung estudyante, kaya niya mararamdaman niya yun on both parts of the wood na nagbabibrate yung kahoy. So it's the vibration, so the whole process, it's only the vibration if that is the earthquakes. Okay? Yes, pwedeng popsicle sticks, pero baka hindi masyadong, as long as maramdaman naman ng estudyante yung vibration. Okay? We sometimes use bigger kasi syempre more stress, more strain, more force. You get the vibrations, you get to feel the vibrations better. Okay? Just be careful with the splits. Okay?